I think that this cycle is going to create, and already has. I mean, I think we are going to create a new generation. It might be like the largest wealth transfer over the next 4 years that we've seen in a long time. So I'm very hopeful that this new generation, people like yourself, younger people, are going to be sound, morally ethical Bitcoiners, and that they're going to change this system that we live in. Because again, I'm not happy here right now. And this is not the world that I want for my kids. And especially, I got grandkids. I don't want those grandkids growing up in this world that is so dysfunctional. So I'm counting on people like yourself to make a difference. And it seems to me like there's a lot of anger right now, but it doesn't seem like it's directed too well as far as being focused on positive things. Right? Let's talk. Let's zoom out for a minute. How many people do you think really know about Bitcoin? I mean, if you and I walk into a bus terminal and we look around and we start talking to people, how many people in that bus terminal, say there's 100 people in there, or you go into just any room, how many people do you think you're going to find in there that know, that you can talk to about Bitcoin?
My guess would be there's probably 50 to 75% of the people have heard of Bitcoin. And I would say there's maybe one that you could actually have a conversation like this possibly with.
I think you're right. I mean, I would be shocked if I could find 3 people that I could have a really good conversation with. And if one person really knew things like what we're discussing, base layer, all this stuff, lots of times Bitcoiners, we're all sitting in a circle. We're like in a campfire, and we're all around there. We're roasted marshmallows. They're all orange marshmallows, and we're just talking to each other. It's like back and forth and back and forth. And then if somebody's walking by outside the circle and they look in, they go, boy, those guys, what a bunch of fucking nuts. And we're all in there with our marshmallows having a great time. What I'm trying to say is that conversation, it's going to start going out. I think we're only, personally, I'm saying that we're around maybe 5% adoption rate right now. I don't think we're much past that. It's like 1999 in my mind in the internet. So we are going to go. And at some point, we're going to cross the chasm. I'm sure you're familiar with that term in the S curve, cross the chasm. Somewhere between 14 to 16% is when it's going to just take off. I mean, it's going to be mainstream. I don't even know if we'll be doing podcasts like this. People will just go, I know everything about Bitcoin I need to know. And I don't know what that future looks like. But when I was talking earlier, that's the future I want. I want the future where Bitcoin is part of the monetary system. It's like the base layer. Maybe it will be a neutral reserve basket. Maybe the U.S. will have had a reset, an actual reset of the currency. And we're on some kind of a neutral reserve basket, almost like after Bretton Woods. You remember Keynes was arguing, I believe, for Bancor, some neutral reserve asset. And, that makes a lot of sense, because when you think of what happened after Bretton Woods and what I was discussing earlier, the fact that we became a deficit nation exporting everything, that was foreseen at that conference, Triffin's dilemma. The idea that world's reserve currency means that you are going to be exporting your currency for things. The rest of the world's going to want your currency, and they do. The dollar in global trade right now is still dominant, or very well, if you compare it to all the other currencies, it's dominant. And so I don't know what that future looks like. I just know that I want something better than what we've got.
Yeah, and speaking of that, we touched on the CBDCs as kind of a good little segue back to the CBDCs and Tether. There's some talk of like, oh, all of a sudden, is Tether going to be this CBDC thing that everyone's been freaking out about for years? I mean, they've been talking about this for a long time, years and years. And so now, here we are, kind of on the doorstep of Tether holding a bunch of the treasuries. I would love for you to get just in general, I'm just throwing that out there, but I would love for your thoughts on just Tether and where things could be headed there. And dollar dominance, I guess, too, George, I guess, because that's part of it. Like, parlaying this dollar dominance thing is wild.
Yeah, you're pushing all the buttons here, and I'm going to get again. I hope people can just kind of listen here, because actually, I'll tell you the way to approach this. Okay, this will make it more easy for everybody to get on board. So you remember I mentioned the Bitcoin ETFs. There were a lot of people that opposed Bitcoin ETFs. Options on the ETFs, a lot of people oppose the idea of options coming into the market on the ETFs. We're worried about paper Bitcoin. How would you stop any of those things? How would you, I'm sure you don't have an answer because, yeah, I don't, I don't either. I don't have an answer to that. I don't know of anybody who was complaining or upset about the Bitcoin ETFs. There is no way to stop this. Bitcoin is like, it's like a virus and it's on its own path. You and I aren't going to direct it. It's going to go where it does. And you know the expression, Bitcoin is for your enemies. Well, guess what? That's true. It really is. I mean, you can't stop this stuff. So when I talk about Tether, because, you know, the biggest news right now, in my mind, one of the things that's revolutionary is, you know, Bitcoin, Tether moved to El Salvador, their operations. El Salvador has got an incredible digital assets framework, Bitcoin only, that allows all these companies. I mean, it's a real incentive for them to move there, and they are. So Tether goes there, and then on the 30th of January at that conference, they announce Plan B. They announce that they are going to incorporate through the Taproots protocol with Lightning Labs. They are going to incorporate Tether on Bitcoin and more importantly, the Bitcoin Lightning Network. They're going to come on board. And there are going to be a lot of people that are unhappy with that idea. But I'm just going to say to them, I'll listen to whatever you want to say, but explain to me how you stop Tether from doing that. And in my mind, you can't. So let's just accept it and let's understand what it means going forward. First off, I do think it's going to be revolutionary for Lightning. You know, Lightning has got some real issues for scalability. Bitcoin, you know, Bitcoin itself has problems in scalability or speed, however you want to discuss it. You know, that the idea that Satoshi, you know, correctly understood that he was going to have, you know, there's decentralization, security, and then scalability or speed, the trilemma, you know, or the dilemma for the blockchain. And Satoshi, he rightly picked. He said, we're going to have decentralization and security. And speed and scalability will have to be worked out on a different layer. And he talked about this. You know, Hal Finney did too. They already knew that this was not going to work going forward on the base layer. And Lightning, this could provide the liquidity and the channels on board Lightning so that it really scales and it becomes a worldwide layer 2 solution. Because, you know, to establish a channel, you've got to have a 2 of 2 multi-sig. And the base layer can't handle a lot of transactions. You know, we only do 55,000 blocks a year. You can only stick around 4,000 transactions on it. So that's nothing. It's not enough. And this could give us that ability. So, and then the other thing is, well, you know what? I'll just kind of stop there in a way because I don't know where this is going with Tether on the base layer. You know, Tether, I'll tell you something. Here's another thing. They've got 100 employees. They did $13 billion of profit last year. And let me ask you something. What kind of inventory do they have? Do they have trucks? Do they have a whole bunch of, you know, workers? Obviously not. No, they don't have anything. It's a, you know, an intelligent software company, if you will, like Strategy. I mean, and yet they're doing $13 billion worth of business, 100 employees, and they're growing. My God, they've grown 50% in the last 14 months. They're skyrocketing. And this new thing, they're going to get even bigger. And they are a buyer of U.S. Treasuries. They hold a tremendous, I told you, it's over $100 billion worth of U.S. Treasuries. And they are going to continue. You know, some of the things that's being discussed right now in Washington is how to incorporate these stable coins into either a digital asset stockpile or strategic reserve. You know, again, I'm focused on one thing. I want a strategic Bitcoin reserve. I want it Bitcoin only, and that's what I'm pushing for. That's what I'm fighting for. That's what I'm writing for. That's what I want. But these stable coins could be a life raft. And, you know, Paul Ryan former speaker. I mean, he knows that too. He's out there shilling this idea that, stable coins could save the US dollar. So I'm not alone in being concerned about this. And you mentioned CBDC because guess what? There are over 100 law enforcement agencies that are plugged into the Tether network. Now, if they come up to Tether and they say, you see George over there, we don't like him anymore. And so whatever, he's doing, I want you to stop him from doing it. They're going to do it. So that's the threat.
Yeah. It's very, we're in a very interesting world. Well, there's a lot of currencies out there. So we finally have the only two monies, maybe you could say, maybe you could say three: gold, silver, and then Bitcoin. So does that money all converge to one here at some point? Is the battle really the monetary premium inside of the fiat currencies and then gold and silver, and then it converges eventually to Bitcoin to be the anchor that kind of anchors the whole system eventually at some point? Because the more I go on, George, I guess where I'm going with this is that, like, what's your timeline for this? Because the more you study this, the more you're in the system, and the more you see it's going on now because of Tether and what's happening and what the administration is doing now, it feels like we're oscillating back and forth between gradually and then suddenly. And hey, this might be around for 100 more years. And like, I don't know what the answer is. Like, you have to hold two opposing opinions in your head at the same time. Either this thing collapses in the next 5-10 years and just like an iceberg flips gradually then suddenly, and we're on a Bitcoin standard, or I don't know, maybe it's 100 more years of us just kind of like building and building and building. And then eventually people are like, I don't know, this system's brutal and we're sick of it. The dollar dominance because of Tether and all these things happening. And then eventually we go to Bitcoin. I mean, where you fall on that spectrum? Because I keep just violently swinging back and forth.
If you want the answer to that question right there, and you like that spicy clip, check it out here. Come on, we'll see you in there. But if you want the full interview in its entirety, all the spicy clips put together, and you're not going to want to miss it, believe me, then check that out here. Come on, we'll see you in there. Do it.